Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining me here today on our Thursday edition of the Cabral Concept, where we're going to be taking a little sidestep from our training Thursdays or our toxicity-based Thursdays and actually talk to you about a recent research project that I was asked to do by a major corporation through a consulting-based project. Now, it's interesting because I don't do a lot of outside-based consulting for very many other companies. I'm very busy with the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute. I'm busy with Equalife. I'm busy doing all of the podcasts and education that we try to provide. So, but every once in a while, there is a project that I say yes to. And the reason is it's always within my overall philosophy of how can we reach the greatest amount of people out there and just share with them this message of like, what is true health? What is true health and wellness and healing? And so that's what I like to do. So this organization, I did sign a non-disclosure agreement, so it has to remain anonymous, but they reach 1 million people a year, more than 1 million people a year. And not just like they have 1 million members of this organization. Like these are people that follow what this company says to do. And so it was also an interesting research project because it's something that I haven't done now for, well, about 4 years since I wrote The Rain Barrel Effect. I wrote it and then Rain Barrel Effect came out about 3 years ago. Yeah, actually 4 years ago now. And so I wanted to do the research anyways, and I said, sure, yeah, this is a great project. So what they did was they basically enlisted me to look at the nutritional program that they gave their members and to see, did it cover all of the bases? Now, they have great nutritionists on the team, so it's not that they don't, but they wanted to look at it from a deeper naturopathy-based perspective. And so looking at it, okay, based on not just the macronutrients, but also the micronutrients. And they knew that I'm working on a new micronutrient profile inside of our iBone by Equalife app. And so I said, yes, this sounds great. Let me know when you need it by. And I just completed it about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So brand new data. I want to share this with you. So we're going to take 1 minute just for people that don't know what macronutrients are versus micronutrients. And I think you're going to find this really interesting because we live in a world right now where people are overfed yet undernourished. And what that means is that over 70% of people now, at least in developed-based nations, are overweight. Now, again, I've always said before, I'm not here to tell anybody what their body should look like or what's the perfect body. That's not for me at all. Only in terms of health. And we do know in terms of health what it is, right? So we know what it is in terms of waist to hip ratio. We know what it is in terms of body composition. We know what it is in terms of BMI. We know what it is even in neck circumference. So like there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And you can qualify it however you want. That's not what today's show is all about. But what I wanted to share with people is that they're undernourished yet overweight. How is that possible? So it comes down to macronutrients versus micronutrients. Then I'm going to give you all of the data, completely unbiased. And the company came to me specifically because of the Cabral concept, and they know that the information I give to people is unbiased. I always say, I have no dog in the race. I'm trying to continue to get myself as healthy as humanly possible. Thankfully, I'm perfectly healthy right now, but I'm always trying to optimize, like, hey, what's that next level? Like, what can I get to? How far can I push this in a healthy way? I'm trying to help my family. I'm trying to help our global health community. I'm trying to help as many people as we can, all the different practitioners. So again, it's always unbiased because, well, I would be doing myself, just even myself a disservice if I didn't take that right into account. So macronutrients are your carbs, your fat, and your protein, all right? So when we look at calories from fat, we're looking at 9 calories per gram of fat. When we look at carbs and protein, we're looking at 4 calories per gram of carb or protein. So I'm not going to get too deep into the thermogenic effect of foods and all that. We can link up some of these for you today. I'm happy to do that. So, and I'm literally, you know what, instead of doing takeaways, I'm actually going to give you all of the research. Well, I won't give you all the research because then that wouldn't be fair to them. So I'm going to give you like the top 10, all right? So I'm going to give you the top 10 research studies. Why don't I do that? And you'll be able to find all of these right now at stephencabral.com/2344 so that you obviously can check yourself. These are all cited research notations. So again, very interesting for me because macronutrients people pretty much cover. Like however you decide to play around with your macros, you're probably covering them for the most part. So people are getting enough total calories, and for the most part, people are overeating. Like that's just part of the equation. Now, I certainly don't believe that overeating and underexercising is what ultimately is like the only thing that affects people's weight and health. I don't. I've talked about that many times. That is not just about calories in, calories out. I have a lot of podcasts on that and how metabolic rate actually determines so much of this, and how it's actually hormone dysregularity, which goes to thyroid, adrenals, estrogen dominance, what else? Inflammation, gut issues, so a lot of issues, right? But we're not going to talk about that today. What I want to share with you is the micronutrients. So micronutrients are your vitamins, like vitamin E, vitamin K, vitamin A, vitamin D. Those are your fat-soluble vitamins. Then all of your B vitamins, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up, right? So all of your B vitamins. And then we have all of the minerals as well. And when we're talking about vitamin C, there's other minerals, obviously there's other vitamins, of course. But then we have all your minerals, and that's like calcium and magnesium and sodium and potassium. And it's things like iron, and it's selenium and chromium and phosphorus and manganese, like zinc and copper. These are all needed for energy in the body, right? These are things that are vital for your overall immune system and health. And then there's omega-3s and there's amino acids that we need. So those are your micronutrients. And those come from, though, your macros. Here's the problem, is that our food is not the same that it was in the 1950s and before. We know that because of cheap fertilizer that only contains things like nitrogen and a few other nutrients, like 2 other ones, that we're not getting all the nutrients in the soil. Yes, we can grow the crops, but that doesn't mean the nutrients or where they need to be. They're there, but not to the same level. I've done a podcast, and we'll try to link that up as well today, that some minerals and vitamins are anywhere from 30 to 80% less than they were just 60 to 70 years ago. Pretty remarkable. And for organic-based foods too, although it's much better, the soil is better, we're no longer using a lot of times cow-based manure for all of the nutrients that come from that. But also, we're no longer using like a 3-field system. So we're planting crops, same crops, in the same fields, year after year after year after year, and depleting the soil. So, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. We get more crop yield from planting in all fields, but it's less nutritionally dense, and that is the issue. So the ultimate question then that the company came to me was, should our people be using nutritional supplements? And so I said, let's take a look at your diet. I will break down not only the macronutrients that you're giving to people, which you already have because your dietitians are doing that, but I will also get you the micronutrients. So I ran all of it and I gave them the micronutrients, and lo and behold, overall it was very good, but it was deficient in a half a dozen different micronutrients. And the RDA, or the recommended amount, doesn't include people that exercise, because your needs go up the more stress you put on your body. So the less sleep you get, the more stressed you are. Nutrient needs go up, okay? The more you exercise, the more you need to repair tissues. Your nutrients need to go up. The more poor digestion you have, the more nutrients you need, because the less you absorb. So this is not binary. Like this is not like, oh, I'm getting everything I need from food. No, it also depends on your physiology. So I want to share with you the exact research that I gave them, and I will link it up for you so you can read along with it right at stephencabral.com/2344. And I will let you then decide on your own conclusion, which I let them decide as well. Now, I of course, gave them a formal recommendation, but I'm going to share this with you as well. All right. So here we go. I'm going to give you, I said I'd give you 10, so I'm going to give you 10 studies with all the different citations. Okay. So about 1 billion people worldwide are deficient in vitamin D, while 50% of people may have levels insufficient to maintain optimal health. 42% of all Americans, or 138 million, make up this vitamin D deficiency. The source is the Cleveland Clinic. These are, of course, all very reputable sources. So it's interesting. 1 billion people, very low in vitamin D. Okay, well, but what about not optimal? Well, not optimal is at least 4 billion people on the planet. So the majority of people are deficient in vitamin D, and we know it's the majority of Americans as well. They gave you a stat of 138 million. All right, well, let's do the math on that. What is the math on that? It is 260, 276, something like that. Well, there's like 330 million Americans. Well, they don't take into account really children, people that outside of that range. Trust me, children are deficient in vitamin D as well. All right. So majority of people, not optimal in vitamin D through food alone. All right. and sunlight alone as well. But that was not the clinical relevance of the research that I was doing. All right. And one of the reasons why I want to share this with you as well is that there are brilliant people in this world, brilliant PhDs who do all of this research. I'm not a PhD. I actually had the opportunity to go back, get my PhD in nutrition. Wasn't the path I wanted to take. I decided for me, I love working with people. Like I love seeing in the real world these things work. I'm a practitioner. That's what I decided to do. One's not better than the other. I study the research of PhDs and the research that's published, but then I use it in the real world. And I say, okay, is this stacking up? Is this working? So they wanted a practitioner standpoint as well. Anyway, I digress. So next study, 48% of Americans are not getting enough magnesium from a symptomatic standpoint. The source was the Nutrition Reviews Journal. So what would be symptomatology? Poor sleep, anxiety, low mood, low energy. Well, I mean, magnesium is reported to work or helps with over 200 different enzymatic transactions in the body. Next scientific research. This one's from Scientific Reports. Worldwide, about 1.1 billion people are zinc deficient due to inadequate dietary intake. Many Americans, this is the next one, many Americans are not reaching micronutrient intake requirements from food alone, presumably due to eating an energy-rich, nutrient-poor diet. This is from the American College of Nutrition. Interesting, right? This is what they study. I mean, this is the research they do. And what does that mean? Well, it means energy-rich. That means they're getting enough calories, macros. Okay, they have enough energy to supply their body with fuel for the day without going into a catabolic state. But it's not nutrient-rich, right? It's nutrient-poor. Next study. This one's from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. About 75% of the U.S. population, greater than age 1, do not consume the recommended intake of fruit, and more than 80% do not consume the recommended intake of vegetables. All right, so a minimum of 3/4 of our population don't get enough fruits and vegetables. By the way, that's where a lot of our phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, electrolytes are often coming from. The prevalence of vitamin C deficiency and low vitamin C concentrations was lower among children ages 6 to 11 compared to adolescents and adults. Greater than 6% of adults ages 20 to 59 years old were considered vitamin C deficient, and greater than 10% had low serum vitamin C concentrations. Okay, so basically it's saying that we've got a whole host of people that are too low in vitamin C, which is going to affect their immune system, detoxification, hair, skin, nails, tissue turnover. And our youngest people seem to be quite low in vitamin C. Maybe it's because they're not taking enough high vitamin C-based foods, right? This one was from the National Center for Environmental Health, Division of Laboratory Sciences. And again, we're not even talking about optimal. We're talking about just blatant deficiencies. U.S. national surveys indicate that the vast majority of the U.S. population do not meet intake recommendations for potassium. Among U.S. adults greater than the age or equal to 20 years old, fewer than 3% have potassium intakes greater than the adequate intake of 4,700 milligrams per day. This was published in the Journal of Nutrition. Next study. And Haynes found that about 36% of children and adolescents and 61% of adults had intakes lower than the EAR recommendations for magnesium. All right, I'm going to give you 2 more, and then we'll talk about them. These ones are on omega-3s, which are critical for our brain, critical for our nervous system, critical for overall inflammation of the body. 2019 study analyzed data from 45,347 Americans and found that omega-3 intake was lower than the recommendations or recommended amounts in all age groups. This demonstrates that omega-3 insufficiency is common in the United States. All right, one more. I'll get you the quote on this as well. Institute for Natural Medicine. As many as 95% of Americans do not get enough DHA and EPA. Headline right there. So that means not optimal. It doesn't mean like too low. It means optimal. And these are some incredible stats. And one of the reasons for that last stat is that the majority of conventionally farmed meat and foods and farmed fish is anywhere from an 18 to 20 to 1 ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. So very high in inflammatory prostaglandins like arachidonic acid. So why did I share this with you? Well, it's really important for me to understand that as a practitioner, the only thing that matters to me is getting people results. That's it. I would not have been able to be in this industry for 25 years if I was not absolutely obsessed with getting people results. And so when I look at data like this, I say, okay, these are people, these are good nutrition plans, but yet they're still deficient in basic micronutrients that don't matter on a daily basis, but they do matter over time. That means weeks, months, and years, they add up, leading to, well, symptoms such as a little bit of grogginess, a little bit of fatigue, a little bit of headaches, a little bit of joint pain, a little stiffness, some skin rash issues, aging-based signs, more wrinkling of the skin and thinner skin, drier skin, like all of these things, right? They all add up over time. Nothing happens in that moment. So my recommendation for them was what we've recommended now for, well, it's been about 8 years or so. And that is a foundational supplement program. I'm not a huge proponent, and I've said this many times before. I've said this since I've started teaching on the Cabral concept and inside of the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute. I don't believe in mega dosing of supplements. I don't. I don't think that there's a need for it. And I am actually not a proponent. I think too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So what I recommend are optimal doses. And I expect people to be eating as best as they can a good whole food nutrition diet. Whole food first. And then as a safeguard, we take in a little bit of something like a daily activated multi or a daily nutritional support just to fill in the gaps that we would have no matter what. And besides that, I do recommend something like a daily fruit and vegetable blend. Why? Well, it's 22 different organic fruits, vegetables, and superfoods. So if you're always eating the same types of vegetables or you don't eat fruit, well, it's just going to get you those antioxidants, the nutrients from that. And then I do recommend an omega-3, not a mega dose, 2 grams. That's what we're looking at, higher EPA than DHA. And the last one is typically a daily probiotic support to help the gut. Now, we and most practitioners offer 100 or more different nutritional supplements. Why would there be so many then? Well, then it's based on personalized nutrition. So if you run an at-home lab test like the starter kit, you actually can look at all your vitamin deficiencies and all your mineral deficiencies. And if they're not deficient, well, then you don't need extra B vitamins. You don't need extra whatever it might be. Omega-3s, you can run an omega-3 inflammation test. So you can always kind of prove it to yourself, but that's not always an option when you're working with a corporation like, let's say you're working with like a big company that has 10,000 employees, or you're working with an organization like the one I talked about. They're not going to test 1 million people. And so those people could decide to do it on their own. And yes, you get a personalized plan, but you also, as a practitioner, you have to help the greatest amount of people based on the data that you have. And the data clearly shows that people are deficient. And we've known that. And so then, sometimes you'll get pushback and they're like, well, I eat nutrient-dense foods. And I would say, okay, well, what is your diet? And again, because I can run people's macros. And so they're like, well, I get my multivitamin from like beef liver. And I say, okay, nothing wrong with eating beef liver. I know it's kind of the trend right now. And again, I was eating liver, 15 years ago. So like, I get it. Like, this is like, whatever was old is once again new again, right? Like it happens. But I can tell you that no matter what food you look at, there's not like one food that gives you everything, right? So liver might be high in iron and your B vitamins, especially B12, and it might be high in vitamin A and other nutrients, sure. But it's not going to give you your vitamin E. It's not going to give you your calcium. It's not going to give you your potassium. And it's a 2-to-1 ratio in terms of copper to zinc. So you can build up copper instead of building up your zinc. It will actually push down zinc. So it's not going to give you hardly any vitamin C. So these are important things to look at. And the reason is that no one food is supposed to be the end-all be-all. Food is supposed to nourish you, and you should have a well-balanced diet. And then nutritional supplements are never meant to take the place of food. They're an add-on. And then yes, if you have gut overgrowth, you might do something like the CBO protocol, or you might do the Parasupport protocol, or you might do a mold protocol, you might do a functional medicine detox, but that's a finite period of time. It's not every day. So every day is what I urge people, and you can work with your local functional medicine doctor, naturopathic doctor, you can work with your local integrative health practitioner, and they can make recommendations for you as well. You don't have to work with us, and you can use any brand that you want in the world. But I'll tell you right now that don't use a mega dose, and at the same time, you're most likely nutritional deficient. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, and it doesn't mean that you're not eating well. You are. But it does mean that there's deficiencies. And that's just the way it is from micronutrients. And the more that you put out with your body, meaning like the more energy you give out, exercise, sauna, lack of sleep, hard work, you name it, the more nutrients you need. And so I shared this with them, and that was basically the gist of my entire write-up. And I wanted to share that with you because I think sometimes we get into these strange nutritional-based wars, and it doesn't need to be that way. Whole food first, yes. Balanced overall diet, yes. Some nutritional supplements to fill in the gaps and safeguard the areas that you're going to be deficient in from micronutrient ratios. That's it. It's actually a pretty simplified approach. I don't know why there has to be so much division within the industry. But again, it's my job just to not just call it how I see it as a practitioner, but also, yeah, based on 250,000+ clients, but then also based on the research, like the scientific research. And so that's what I wanted to share with you here today. Again, it was a great exercise for me to go through to then re-examine the data, just like I did 4 years ago. And you know what? I have to say, not that I want to be negative. If anything, it just continues to get worse from the big agriculture-based firms, which is, by the way, what most people eat. The food is just getting worse and worse with more man-made based food rather than what nature provided us. But we can always do our best. We should do our best. We shouldn't overly worry. And that's why I talk about take some safeguards if you want on a daily basis. I use the Daily Foundation Protocol Level 2. You can use absolutely anything you want. Work with your practitioner, get their advice. You can run something like the starter kit with them. And just, again, do what you feel is right. At the end of the day, it's what you feel is right and what you feel comfortable with. So hopefully this was helpful. I'll link all this up at stevencabral.com/2344 for the details. All right, take care. Have an amazing rest of the day.